The kitchen clock read 11:47 p.m. when my wife dropped the bomb that would destroy our marriage. I was standing at the sink, washing dishes like the domesticated husband I'd become, when Olivia waltzed in wearing that silk nightgown that used to drive me crazy. Now, it just reminded me of how far we'd drifted apart. "Jack, honey, I have an idea for the office party next weekend," she said, her voice carrying that fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. "I want to invite Brad." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I nearly dropped the plate I was scrubbing. Brad Connors, her college ex-boyfriend, the guy she'd dated for 3 years before we met, the one whose name still came up in conversations more often than I liked. "Brad? Your ex-Brad?" I kept my voice neutral, but my grip tightened on the dish towel. "Yes, that Brad." She leaned against the counter, studying my reaction like I was some lab rat in her personal psychology experiment. "He's doing consulting work with our tech division now. It would be perfectly natural to invite him." I turned to face her fully, taking in her calculating expression. Olivia Mallory, 35 years old, HR director at Pinnacle Tech Solutions, my wife of 8 years. Beautiful, ambitious, and apparently testing me like I was some insecure teenager. "Let me get this straight," I said, crossing my arms. "You want to bring your ex-boyfriend to your office party, the same ex-boyfriend you lived with for 3 years, the one who, according to you, was the love of your life before you met me." "Oh, Jack." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "That's exactly the kind of reaction I was hoping you wouldn't have. Modern marriages are built on trust, not jealousy. I thought you were more evolved than that." Evolved. Right. I was Jack Mallory, 38 years old, construction project manager for Morrison & Associates, ex-military, blue-collar roots, apparently not evolved enough for my wife's social experiments. "So this is what? A test?" I asked. "If you want to call it that, sure." She moved closer, running her finger along my forearm. "A trust test. I want to see if my husband is secure enough in our relationship to handle me being around Brad without getting all caveman about it." I stared at her for a long moment. 8 years of marriage, and she was testing me like we were dating. The manipulative undertone in her voice was unmistakable, but I could play this game too. "You know what, Liv? You're absolutely right. I trust you completely." I smiled, and I could see the surprise flicker across her face. She'd expected jealousy, anger, maybe even a fight. In fact, why don't I invite his wife too? What's her name again? Melissa? The color drained from Olivia's face so fast I almost laughed. His wife? Yeah, Melissa Connors. If we're all being so modern and evolved, it would be rude not to include her, don't you think? I mean, if this is really just about professional courtesy and old friendships, she should be part of it. Olivia recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. I'd seen that flash of panic, and it told me everything I needed to know. "Of course," she said, her voice slightly strained. That's a great idea. Very mature of you." "I try." I kissed her forehead, tasting the lie on my lips. "I'm going to finish cleaning up. You should probably call Brad tomorrow and let him know we're both looking forward to seeing him and Melissa at the party." She nodded and headed upstairs, but I caught her reflection in the kitchen window. She looked like she'd swallowed a live grenade. After she was gone, I stood in our kitchen, our custom-renovated kitchen with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, the kitchen we'd designed together during happier times, and felt something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't jealousy, it was clarity. My wife was planning something, and it involved her ex-boyfriend. The trust test was just cover, a way to make me look like the bad guy if I objected. But she hadn't counted on me playing along. She definitely hadn't counted on me suggesting we invite his wife. I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled Brad Connors. There he was, all over LinkedIn and the Pinnacle Tech website. Senior technology consultant, rising star in the company, married to Melissa Connors, née Patterson, for 6 years. He looked exactly like I remembered from Olivia's old photos. Tall, lean, expensive haircut. The kind of guy who wore designer jeans and called them casual Friday attire. But it was his professional bio that caught my attention. He'd joined Pinnacle Tech just 3 months ago. 3 months. Right around the time Olivia started working late more often, right around the time she'd begun talking about expanding her professional network and building strategic partnerships. I scrolled through his social media, and there it was, a photo from 2 weeks ago. A company lunch at Romano's, the upscale Italian place downtown. Brad was seated at a table with several Pinnacle Tech employees, including my wife. They weren't sitting next to each other, but Olivia was looking at him with an expression I recognized. It was the same way she used to look at me. The cold feeling in my chest spread outward, but it wasn't hurt. It was something much more dangerous. It was the same calculating calm I'd felt during my military days when I was planning a mission. Every detail mattered. Every variable had to be accounted for. Every outcome had to be anticipated. If Olivia wanted to play games, I'd play. But she'd learn the hard way that I was much better at strategy than she'd ever imagined. I finished the dishes, turned off the lights, and headed upstairs. Olivia was already in bed, pretending to read a book on her tablet. She looked up when I entered. "You're really okay with this?" she asked. "With Brad coming to the party?" "Absolutely." I started undressing, keeping my voice casual. "Like you said, it's about trust. And I trust you completely, Liv. You'd never do anything to jeopardize our marriage." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course not. I love you, Jack." "I love you too," I replied, and for the first time in 8 years the words felt like a lie. As I lay in bed listening to her breathing even out, I was already planning my next move. Tomorrow I'd start doing some research. I'd find out exactly what my wife and her ex-boyfriend had been up to, and then I'd decide what to do about it. The trust test was about to begin, all right. But Olivia had no idea who was really being tested. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., same as always. Military habits die hard, and 20 years later, I still couldn't sleep past dawn. Olivia was still unconscious, her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. She looked innocent in sleep, vulnerable. It was easy to forget she was planning something when she looked like that. But I wasn't forgetting anything. I made coffee and sat in my home office, a converted bedroom where I kept my project files and computer. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting shadows across my desk as I opened my laptop and got to work. First, I needed to understand the timeline. When had Brad really started at Pinnacle Tech? When had Olivia's behavior started changing? I pulled up her social media accounts. We shared passwords, another one of those trust things she'd insisted on years ago. Funny how that was about to backfire on her. Her Facebook posts from the past 3 months told a story. More photos from work events, more mentions of exciting new projects and dynamic team members. In March, she'd posted about a welcome lunch for new consultants with a group photo. Brad was in the back row, but Olivia had tagged him specifically. Her Instagram was even more revealing. She'd always been careful about what she posted there, but I found what I was looking for in her story archives. A photo from 6 weeks ago, a coffee cup from Starbucks with the caption, "Early Morning Strategy Session." The location tag was for the Starbucks on 5th Street, the one near the business district, the one that was 20 minutes out of her way from both home and office. I cross-referenced it with Brad's Instagram. Same day, same time, a photo of his laptop at what looked like the same Starbucks table. His caption, "Great minds think alike." My jaw clenched. Strategy session, my ass. I spent the next hour building a timeline, cross-referencing social media posts, credit card statements, and Olivia's work calendar. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Late meetings that corresponded with Brad's posts from various restaurants. Team-building exercises that happened to coincide with his business trips. Networking events that weren't on any company calendar I could find. By 7 a.m., I had enough circumstantial evidence to confront her, but that would be stupid. If I was right about what was happening, confronting her now would just make her more careful. No, I needed solid proof, and I needed allies. I picked up my phone and called Tom Reeves, my best friend since high school and the only person I trusted completely. Tom was an ex-cop who now ran security for the Barrow, the local blue-collar bar where we'd been drinking together for 15 years. "Jesus, Jack, it's 7 in the morning," Tom's gravelly voice answered after 4 rings. "I need a favor," I said without preamble. "What kind of favor?" "The kind where you don't ask questions until later." There was a pause. Tom and I had been through enough together that he knew when I was serious. "What do you need?" "I need you to run a background check on someone. Brad Connors works at Pinnacle Tech, and I need you to find out everything you can about his wife, Melissa." "This about Olivia?" "Maybe, probably. I'll explain later." "Give me until tonight. Meet me at the Barrow around 8. "Thanks, Tom." "Jack, be careful, man. Whatever this is about, be smart about it." I hung up and heard movement upstairs. Olivia was awake. I quickly closed my laptop and started breakfast, slipping back into my role as the unsuspecting husband. She came downstairs 20 minutes later, dressed in a sharp black suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. She looked every inch the successful professional, from her perfectly styled hair to her designer heels. "Morning, honey," she said, kissing my cheek. "You're up early." Couldn't sleep, kept thinking about the party. I handed her a cup of coffee, watching her face carefully. "I'm actually excited to meet Brad. You've mentioned him so much lately, I feel like I already know him." A tiny muscle in her jaw twitched. "I haven't mentioned him that much." "Sure you have. The new consultant who's bringing fresh ideas to the tech division. The guy who's helping you restructure the HR protocols. The one who suggested that new project management software." I smiled innocently. "You talk about his ideas all the time." She took a sip of coffee, buying herself time to think. "He's just very good at his job. It's refreshing to work with someone so innovative." "I bet it is. So when are you going to call him about the party? About bringing Melissa?" "I'll call him today," she said quickly. "I'm sure they'll both be thrilled to come." "Great. I'm looking forward to it." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, pausing to look back at me. "Jack, thank you for being so understanding about this. It means a lot to me." "Of course, Liv. I trust you." After she left, I stood at the kitchen window and watched her drive away in her silver BMW. She'd gotten that car 6 months ago, claiming she needed something more professional for client meetings. Now I wondered who she'd really been trying to impress. I had 8 hours before my meeting with Tom. Time to do some more digging. I started with Brad's wife, Melissa. Her social media was more open than her husband's, and what I found was interesting. She was a social butterfly, constantly posting about dinner parties, charity events, and girls' nights out. But over the past 2 months, her posts had taken on a different tone. More solo activities, more complaints about being too busy to connect with people, more passive-aggressive comments about people who don't appreciate what they have. Either Melissa was going through her own crisis, or she was starting to notice her husband's suspicious behavior. I found her work information easily enough. She was a marketing coordinator for a local nonprofit. Their office was in the same building complex as a gym I'd been meaning to check out. What a convenient coincidence. At 11 a.m., I called in sick to work and drove across town to the Riverside Fitness Center. I signed up for a trial membership and spent an hour working out, keeping an eye on the parking lot. At 12:15, a white Honda Civic pulled in and a petite blonde woman got out. According to her Instagram, Melissa Connors had lunch at the smoothie bar here every Tuesday. I waited 5 minutes, then walked into the smoothie bar. She was sitting alone at a corner table, scrolling through her phone while sipping something green and healthy-looking. "Excuse me," I said, approaching her table. "Are you Melissa Connors?" She looked up, startled. "Yes?" "I'm Jack Mallory. My wife works with your husband at Pinnacle Tech." "Olivia Mallory?" Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed quickly by something else. Wariness? Suspicion? "Oh," she said carefully. "Hi. I hope you don't mind me approaching you like this. Olivia mentioned that you and Brad might be coming to the office party this weekend, and I wanted to introduce myself. Make sure you felt welcome." Melissa's expression shifted, confusion replacing wariness. "Office party? Brad didn't mention any office party." "Interesting. Oh, maybe Olivia hasn't had a chance to call him yet. She was going to invite you both today." "That's nice of her." Melissa's voice was neutral, but her grip on her smoothie cup had tightened. "Brad's been working a lot lately. Long hours, lots of meetings. Sometimes I feel like I barely see him." "I know the feeling. Olivia's been putting in extra time, too. All these new projects, new consultants to work with. It's demanding." Something shifted in Melissa's face. "New consultants?" "Well, Brad's not exactly new anymore, is he? 3 months now? But Olivia talks about him like he just started. Always going on about his fresh perspective, his innovative ideas." I kept my voice casual, conversational. They must work pretty closely together. Melissa set down her smoothie cup. "How closely?" I shrugged. "You know how it is with these corporate partnerships. Late meetings, strategy sessions, team-building exercises. Olivia's been staying late a lot, coming home talking about all the great work they're doing together." The color had drained from Melissa's face. She was a smart woman. She could read between the lines. "I should go," she said, starting to stand. "Of course, but hey, I hope you can make it to the party. It would be great to get to know you better. Maybe we can compare notes about being married to such dedicated professionals." She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. "Maybe we can," she said finally. I watched her leave, noting the way she pulled out her phone before she even reached her car. By tonight, she'd either confronted Brad or started doing her own investigation. Either way, I'd planted the seeds of doubt. Now I just had to wait for them to grow. At 8 o'clock sharp, I walked into the Barrow. It was exactly what you'd expect from a blue-collar bar in Maine. Dim lighting, worn wooden floors, the smell of beer and fried food, and a clientele that worked with their hands for a living. This was my world, not Olivia's. She'd been here exactly twice in 8 years, both times making it clear she was slumming it. Tom was waiting in our usual booth, a manila folder on the table in front of him. He looked grim. "You're not going to like this," he said without preamble. "Tell me." He opened the folder. Brad Connors, 37, married to Melissa Patterson Connors for 6 years. Clean record, good credit, no red flags on paper. But I called in some favors, talked to a guy who knows someone at Pinnacle Tech. And your wife's been having lunch with him twice a week for the past month. Always the same routine. She leaves the office at noon. He leaves 5 minutes later. They meet at various restaurants around town. Never the same place twice. My hands clenched into fists. What else? Last Friday, they were seen at the Marriott downtown. The bar, not a room, but they were there for 3 hours. Very cozy, according to my source. The cold feeling in my chest spread outward. Anything else? Tom hesitated. There's a rumor going around the office about Olivia and the new consultant. Nothing concrete, just whispers, but where there's smoke. I stared at the folder, processing the information. It wasn't proof of an affair, not yet. But it was close enough. What about his wife? Melissa? She's been asking questions too. Called in sick to work today, spent the afternoon parked outside the Pinnacle Tech building. I think she's starting to put the pieces together. Good. Tom leaned forward. Jack, what are you planning? I looked up at him, my oldest friend, the man who'd watched my back in more fights than I could count. Olivia wants to play games, Tom. She wants to test me, manipulate me, make me look like the jealous husband while she has her fun with her ex-boyfriend. But she made one mistake. What's that? She underestimated me. I closed the folder and slid it back to him. I need one more favor. Name it. I need you to keep digging. Phone records if you can get them, more surveillance, whatever it takes. And I need you to keep an eye on Melissa Connors. I think she's going to be very useful. Tom nodded slowly. This is about more than just catching them, isn't it? I stood up, tossing a 20 on the table. Olivia wanted a trust test, Tom. She's about to get one. But she's not going to like the results. As I walked out of the barrow, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose, clarity, the same focused determination that had gotten me through 2 tours in Afghanistan and a dozen construction projects that everyone said were impossible. My wife thought she was playing chess with a checkers player. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next few days passed in a blur of careful observation and strategic planning. Olivia went through the motions of calling Brad about the party, a conversation I listened to from the hallway outside our bedroom. "Hi, it's me," she said, her voice dropping to that intimate tone she used to reserve for me. "About the party this weekend. There's been a slight change of plans." I couldn't hear Brad's response, but I could see Olivia's reflection in the dresser mirror. She was pacing, running her free hand through her hair, a nervous habit she'd never quite broken. "Jack suggested we invite Melissa too," she continued. I know. It wasn't part of the original plan, but I couldn't say no without looking suspicious." More silence while Brad spoke. "Of course I can handle it. Can you?" Her voice had an edge now. "Look, we just need to be careful. Act natural. It's one evening, Brad. We can manage one evening." She ended the call and sat heavily on the bed, staring at her phone. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She looked lost, conflicted, like she was realizing the magnitude of what she was doing. But then she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and became the calculating woman I'd been living with for months. The pity evaporated. Friday morning, I got a text from Tom. "Package delivered. Check your email." I opened my laptop and found a folder of photos that made my blood run cold. Olivia and Brad at Romano's, leaning across the table toward each other. Olivia and Brad in the parking garage at her office building, standing close enough to kiss. Olivia and Brad at the Marriott bar, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. But it was the last photo that sealed it. Taken yesterday through the window of a coffee shop downtown, it showed Olivia and Brad in what could only be described as an intimate embrace. Her arms were around his neck, his hands on her waist, and they were looking at each other like they were the only 2 people in the world. I stared at that photo for a long time, memorizing every detail. The way she tilted her head, the same way she used to look at me. The smile on her face, genuine and happy in a way I hadn't seen in months. The complete absence of guilt or shame in her body language. My wife wasn't just having an affair, she was in love with another man. The realization should have destroyed me. Instead, it crystallized my resolve. Olivia had made her choice. Now she'd live with the consequences. Saturday evening arrived gray and drizzling, typical October weather for Maine. The Pinnacle Tech office party was being held in their conference center, a modern glass and steel building that screamed corporate success. I put on my best suit, navy blue, conservative, the kind of outfit that said responsible husband, and waited for Olivia to finish getting ready. She emerged from our bedroom, looking stunning in a black cocktail dress that hugged her curves perfectly. Her makeup was flawless, her hair swept up in an elegant chignon. She'd dressed to impress, and it wasn't for me. "You look beautiful," I said, and meant it. She was beautiful, beautiful and treacherous, and about to get exactly what she deserved. Thank you. She checked her reflection in the hallway mirror one last time. Are you ready for this? More than you know. We drove to the party in relative silence, the tension in the car thick enough to cut. Olivia kept checking her phone, her nervous energy palpable. I, on the other hand, felt calm, focused, ready. The Pinnacle Tech Conference Center was buzzing with activity when we arrived. The party was in full swing, soft jazz music, an open bar, elegantly dressed professionals networking and laughing. It was Olivia's world, not mine, but I could play the part when necessary. There's Brad, Olivia said, her voice carefully neutral. She nodded toward the bar, where a tall, lean man in an expensive suit was talking to a group of colleagues. Brad Connors looked exactly like his photos, but seeing him in person added details the surveillance shots had missed. The confident way he held himself, the practiced smile, the expensive watch that caught the light when he gestured. He was handsome in that generic corporate way, the kind of man who looked good in a suit and knew it. Should we go say hello? I asked. In a minute. Let me introduce you to some people first. For the next 30 minutes, Olivia paraded me around the party like a show pony, introducing me to her colleagues as my husband Jack, the construction manager. The way she said it made my profession sound like an apology, something she had to explain rather than something to be proud of. I smiled and made small talk, playing the supportive spouse while keeping one eye on Brad. He was working the room like a politician, charming everyone he met, but I noticed he kept glancing in our direction, specifically at Olivia. Jack! A woman's voice called out behind me. I turned to see Melissa Connors approaching, and I had to suppress a smile. She looked fantastic, a red dress that complemented her blonde hair, confidence radiating from every step. But it was the determined set of her jaw that told me everything I needed to know. She'd done her homework. Melissa, I said warmly, taking her hand. You made it. Where's Brad? Oh, he's around here somewhere, she said airily. Networking. You know how it is. Olivia had gone rigid beside me. Melissa, hi. I'm so glad you could come. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Melissa replied, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. I've been so curious to meet all of Brad's new colleagues, especially the ones he works so closely with. The temperature around our little group seemed to drop 10 degrees. Olivia's professional smile never wavered, but I could see the panic in her eyes. Well, I said cheerfully, why don't we go find Brad? I'm eager to meet the man Olivia's been raving about. We made our way through the crowd toward the bar, and I watched Brad's face change as he spotted us approaching. His politician's smile faltered for just a moment, replaced by something that looked like genuine fear. Brad, I called out, extending my hand as we reached him. Jack Mallory, I've heard so much about you. He recovered quickly, I'll give him that. Jack, great to finally meet you. Olivia talks about you all the time. Liar. But I kept smiling. And you remember Melissa, of course. Hello, darling, Melissa said, rising on her toes to kiss her husband's cheek. But her eyes were cold, and she held the kiss just long enough to whisper something in his ear that made him flinch. So, Brad, I continued, accepting a beer from the bartender. Olivia tells me you two have been working on some exciting projects together. Late nights, strategy sessions, really innovative stuff. It's been collaborative, Brad said carefully. I bet it has. I took a sip of my beer, savoring the moment. Olivia's been coming home so energized lately, full of ideas and new perspectives. It's wonderful to see her so stimulated by her work. Melissa made a sound that might have been a laugh or a snort. Olivia shot her a sharp look. Yes, well, Brad said, we've been exploring some new paradigms in human resources management. Paradigms, I repeated. That's a fancy word. I'm just a simple construction guy, but it sounds impressive. The conversation continued for another few minutes, each exchange loaded with double meanings and barely concealed hostility. Brad was sweating despite the air conditioning. Olivia kept trying to steer the conversation to safer topics. Melissa watched it all with the satisfied expression of a cat who'd cornered a particularly fat mouse. Finally, Olivia excused herself to use the restroom, and Brad immediately followed, claiming he needed to check on something with the catering staff. Melissa and I watched them go, noting how they headed in the same direction. "Subtle," Melissa observed. "Very," I agreed. "Drink?" "God, yes." We moved to a quieter corner of the room, drinks in hand. Melissa studied me with intelligent green eyes. "So," she said finally, "how long have you known?" "Suspected for about a week. Confirmed 3 days ago. You?" "I started putting pieces together after our conversation at the gym. Thank you for that, by the way. Very smoothly done." "You're welcome. What's your plan?" She smiled, and it wasn't a nice expression. "Divorce. I've already retained a lawyer and started documenting everything. Brad's going to lose the house, half his retirement, and probably his job once HR finds out he's been sleeping with a colleague." "Sounds reasonable. What about you?" I looked across the room where Olivia and Brad were having an intense, whispered conversation near the restrooms. They looked like co-conspirators, which I suppose they were. "I'm going to destroy them," I said simply. Melissa raised her glass. "To justice. To justice." We clinked glasses just as Olivia and Brad returned, both looking flustered and trying too hard to appear casual. "Everything all right?" I asked innocently. "Fine," Olivia said quickly. "Just bathroom line." "And I was checking on the dessert service," Brad added. "Should be out soon." "Wonderful," Melissa said brightly. "I do love a good dessert. Don't you, Olivia?" The rest of the evening passed in a blur of increasingly uncomfortable small talk and loaded glances. By 9 o'clock, both Brad and Olivia looked like they wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Melissa and I, on the other hand, were having a wonderful time. As the party wound down, we made our goodbyes, hugs and handshakes all around, promises to get together soon that everyone knew were lies. In the car on the way home, Olivia was quiet for the first 10 minutes. Finally, she spoke. "That was awkward." "Was it? I thought it went well. I like Melissa. She's got a good sense of humor." She was acting strange, hostile almost. "Hostile?" I didn't notice. Maybe she's just protective of her husband. You know how wives can be when other women get too close to their men. Olivia shot me a sharp look. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just an observation." I kept my eyes on the road, my voice casual. "Although, now that you mention it, you and Brad do seem pretty close. All that talk about collaborative projects and innovative paradigms, very intimate working relationship. It's not intimate, it's professional. Of course it is. I trust you, remember? That's what this whole thing was about. Your trust test." She was quiet for the rest of the drive home. Later that night, as Olivia slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. The party had been a success. I'd confirmed my suspicions, allied myself with Melissa, and put both Brad and Olivia on notice that their secret wasn't as secret as they thought. But that was just the opening gambit. The real game was about to begin, and I intended to win. Sunday morning brought the kind of crisp autumn air that usually made me want to rake leaves and drink coffee on the back porch. Instead, I found myself sitting in my home office at 6 a.m., planning the systematic destruction of my wife's life. The party had been more successful than I'd hoped. Not only had I confirmed the affair, but I'd gained a powerful ally in Melissa and managed to rattle both cheaters badly enough that they were bound to make mistakes. Now I just had to be patient and let them hang themselves. I didn't have to wait long. Olivia's phone buzzed at 7:15 a.m. with a text message. She was in the shower, so I checked it, using the passcode I'd memorized months ago during happier times when we actually shared things. The message was from Brad. "We need to talk. Coffee at 9? I deleted the message and went back to making breakfast, humming softly to myself. When Olivia came downstairs, she checked her phone immediately, a new habit she'd developed over the past few months. "Everything okay?" I asked, watching her frown at the screen. "Fine. Just work stuff." "On Sunday?" "You know how it is. The corporate world never sleeps." She spent the next hour checking her phone every few minutes, growing more agitated each time. Finally, she announced she was going to the grocery store. "Need anything special?" she asked, grabbing her purse. "Just the usual. Drive safe." I waited 10 minutes after she left, then got in my truck and followed her. She didn't go to the grocery store. Instead, she drove straight to the Starbucks on 5th Street, the same one where she'd been having her strategy sessions with Brad. I parked across the street and watched through the window as she sat alone at a corner table, checking her phone obsessively. After 20 minutes, she gave up and left, her frustration visible even from a distance. Brad was avoiding her. The party had spooked him, and now he was pulling back, leaving Olivia to twist in the wind. Perfect. That afternoon, Tom called with more intelligence. "Your boy Brad had an interesting morning," he said without preamble. "Do tell." He spent 3 hours at Morrison, Patterson and Associates. I felt my blood turn to ice. Morrison, Patterson and Associates was the most aggressive divorce firm in the state. "You sure?" "Positive. My source at the parking garage saw him go in at 9, come out at noon looking like he'd been hit by a truck. So Brad was lawyering up, probably getting ahead of the divorce Melissa was planning. Smart move, but it left Olivia completely exposed. What about Melissa? She's been busy too. Spent yesterday afternoon photographing everything in their house. Today she cleaned out their joint savings account. Your wife's boyfriend is about to be a very poor man. I couldn't help but smile. Melissa was even more ruthless than I'd given her credit for. Anything else? Yeah. Word around Pinnacle Tech is that there's going to be an HR investigation. Somebody reported a potential workplace relationship. Any idea who? Tom chuckled. Anonymous tip. Could have been anyone. Of course it could have. It definitely couldn't have been me, sitting in my truck outside the office building at 8 a.m., calling the company's ethics hotline from a burner phone I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Monday morning, Olivia left for work looking like she was heading to her own execution. She'd barely slept, tossing and turning all night, and her usually perfect appearance was showing cracks. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes, and her hands shook slightly as she applied her lipstick. "Big day at the office?" I asked, kissing her cheek goodbye. "Just the usual." But her voice was strained, and she avoided eye contact. I gave her a 30-minute head start, then drove to Pinnacle Tech myself. I parked in the visitor lot and walked into the lobby like I belonged there, wearing work clothes and carrying a clipboard, the universal camouflage of the blue-collar worker. "Maintenance inspection," I told the receptionist, flashing an ID badge I'd made on my computer. "Just need to check the HVAC system in the conference room." She barely looked up from her computer. "Third floor, take a right off the elevator." The Pinnacle Tech office was all glass walls and open spaces, designed to promote collaboration and transparency. Ironic, considering what had been going on there. I could see Olivia at her desk, talking intensely on the phone. Her body language screamed stress. I made my way to the conference room, which had a perfect view of the main office floor. I didn't actually inspect anything. I just stood there with my clipboard, watching the drama unfold. At 10:30, 2 people in dark suits walked through the office, heading straight for the HR department. Internal investigators, probably brought in to handle the workplace relationship complaint. They disappeared into a conference room with Olivia's boss, a stern-looking woman named Patricia Hendricks. By 11, word had spread through the office. I could see clusters of employees whispering, glancing toward Olivia's desk. She was still on the phone, but now she looked panicked, her free hand gesturing frantically. At 11:15, Brad arrived. He walked through the office like he was walking through a minefield, avoiding eye contact with everyone. He made it to his desk just as Patricia Hendricks emerged from the conference room. "Mr. Connors? Ms. Mallory? Could I see you both, please?" The entire office went silent. You could have heard a pin drop as Olivia and Brad followed Patricia into the conference room where the investigators were waiting. I'd seen enough. I slipped out of the building and drove home, satisfied that phase 2 of my plan was in motion. Olivia didn't come home until almost 8 p.m. She walked through the front door looking like she'd been through a blender, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, her professional composure completely shattered. "Rough day?" I asked from the kitchen, where I was making dinner. She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. Tell me the truth and face the consequences, or try to maintain the lie and hope she could fix things before I found out. She chose the lie. "Just busy. You know how Mondays are." "I do indeed. Hungry? I made your favorite, chicken parmesan." She managed a weak smile. "That sounds wonderful." We ate dinner in near silence, Olivia picking at her food while I made casual conversation about my day. I told her about a problem we were having with a contractor, a scheduling conflict on one of my job sites, the weather forecast for the rest of the week, normal husband things, the kind of mundane details that make up a marriage. She barely responded, lost in her own crisis. After dinner, she excused herself to take a bath. I cleaned up the dishes and waited. At 9:30, her phone rang. She answered it in the bathroom, but I could hear her voice through the door, high and stressed. "I can't talk now," she whispered. "Jack is right outside. No, I don't know what we're going to do. They're investigating, Brad. They have photos." "What do you mean you can't see me anymore? We're in this together." Her voice broke on the last words, and I heard the unmistakable sound of crying. I felt a moment of something that might have been pity, but it passed quickly. She'd made her choices. Now she had to live with them. Tuesday morning brought fresh developments. Olivia left for work looking like a woman facing a firing squad, and I followed my new routine of checking in on the situation at Pinnacle Tech. This time, I didn't need to go inside. The drama was visible from the parking lot. At 10 a.m., Brad walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box, the universal symbol of corporate termination. He threw the box in the back of his Tesla and drove away without looking back. At 10:30, Olivia emerged, also carrying a box. But unlike Brad, she sat in her car for a long time, crying. I watched from across the street as she made phone call after phone call, each one apparently going to voicemail. She was trying to reach Brad, but he was already gone. The coward had cut and run, leaving her to face the consequences alone. I drove home and waited. She didn't come back until evening, and when she did, she looked like a ghost. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying, her professional facade completely gone. "Jack," she said, standing in the doorway of the kitchen, "we need to talk." "Of course. Sit down, I'll make some tea." She sat at the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd planned our future, where she'd proposed her trust test just a week ago. It felt like a lifetime. "I lost my job today," she said quietly. "Oh no. What happened?" She looked at me, searching my face for something. Suspicion? Knowledge? I kept my expression neutral, concerned, but not surprised. "There was an investigation. Someone said I was having an inappropriate relationship with a colleague." "That's ridiculous. Who would say something like that?" "I don't know. It was anonymous." She wrapped her hands around the mug of tea I'd given her, seeking warmth. "They had photos, Jack, pictures of me and Brad together, but they were taken out of context, made to look like something they weren't." "What kind of photos?" "Just us talking, having coffee, normal work interactions, but the way they were presented." She shook her head. It looked bad. I sat down across from her, the picture of the concerned husband. "Liv, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She tensed. "Okay, Are you having an affair with Brad? The question hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. This was her chance to come clean, to tell the truth, to maybe salvage something from the wreckage of our marriage. She looked me in the eye and lied. No, Jack, I swear to you, nothing happened between us. We're colleagues, that's all, friends, maybe, but nothing more. And with those words, she sealed her fate. I reached across the table and took her hand, squeezing gently. Then we'll fight this. We'll hire a lawyer, sue the company for wrongful termination. I believe you, Liv. We'll get through this together. She started crying again, but this time it was relief mixed with guilt. She thought she'd fooled me. She thought she was safe. She had no idea that her real problems were just beginning. The next few days passed in a strange kind of suspended animation. Olivia played the role of the wrongfully terminated employee, making phone calls to lawyers and sending out resumes while maintaining her innocence about the affair. I played the supportive husband, offering comfort and reassurance while secretly documenting every lie she told. She had no idea that I'd already spoken to 3 different divorce attorneys, or that I'd moved half our savings into an account she didn't know about. She certainly didn't know that I'd installed a GPS tracker on her car and recording software on her computer. If she wanted to play games, I'd play. But I was playing for keeps. Wednesday afternoon, while Olivia was at another job interview, actually meeting with a lawyer about wrongful termination, I got a call from Tom. You need to see this, he said. Meet me at the Barrow in an hour. I found him in our usual booth, looking grim. He slid a manila envelope across the table. What is it? Brad's phone records. My guy at the phone company owed me a favor. I opened the envelope and felt my jaw clench. Pages and pages of call logs, text messages, and data usage. The pattern was unmistakable. Dozens of calls and texts between Brad and Olivia going back 3 months. Long conversations, sometimes lasting hours. Messages sent at all hours of the day and night. But it was the content of the text messages that made my blood boil. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. You felt so good in my arms. I love you too. This is crazy, but I can't help it. Jack suspects nothing. He's so trusting. It's almost sad. When can we be together? Really together, I mean. Not just stolen hours. Soon. I just need to figure out how to handle Jack. He doesn't deserve this, but I can't live a lie anymore. I read through months of their affair, watching it evolve from casual flirtation to deep emotional connection to plans for a future together. They'd been planning to leave their spouses. They'd talked about moving away, starting fresh, building a life together. And through it all, Olivia had come home to me every night, kissed me goodbye every morning, told me she loved me while planning to destroy everything we'd built together. There's more, Tom said quietly. I looked up from the phone records. What? Hotel receipts, credit card statements. They've been meeting at the Marriott downtown twice a week for the past month. Always the same room, always paid for with Brad's corporate card. The manila envelope felt heavy in my hands. This wasn't just an emotional affair anymore. They'd been sleeping together, planning a future together, laughing about how gullible I was. Jack, Tom said carefully, what are you going to do with this? I looked at my oldest friend, the man who'd stood by me through 2 deployments and a dozen crises. I'm going to end this, all of it. How? Completely. Thursday morning, I put my plan into motion. I called in sick to work and spent the day making preparations. First, I visited my lawyer and signed the divorce papers I'd had drawn up. Then I went to the bank and moved the rest of our joint assets into my private account, legally, since the money was half mine anyway. Next, I stopped by a printing shop and made copies of everything. The phone records, the text messages, the hotel receipts, the surveillance photos Tom had taken. I put together a comprehensive dossier of my wife's affair, complete with dates, times, and locations. Finally, I drove to Pinnacle Tech and requested a meeting with Patricia Hendricks, the HR director who'd fired Olivia. Mr. Mallory, she said, looking surprised. I wasn't expecting to see you. I'm sorry about the situation with your wife. That's actually why I'm here, I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. I have some information I think you should see. I handed her a copy of the dossier. She flipped through it, her expression growing more serious with each page. Where did you get this? Does it matter? The question is, what are you going to do about it? She closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. Mr. Mallory, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, but the investigation is closed. Both employees have been terminated. What about Brad's severance package, his references, his corporate credit card that he used to pay for hotel rooms? Her expression sharpened. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that Brad Connors used company resources to conduct an extramarital affair with a colleague. That's theft, fraud, and sexual harassment all rolled into one. I'm suggesting that if this information became public, it could be very damaging to Pinnacle Tech's reputation. She stared at me for a long moment. What do you want, Mr. Mallory? I want justice. I want Brad Connors to face real consequences for what he's done, and I want to make sure this never happens to another family. Patricia Hendricks was a smart woman. She could see where this was heading. I'll look into it, she said finally. Thank you. I'll be in touch. I left the Pinnacle Tech building feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Phase 3 was in motion. That evening, Olivia came home from another job interview looking slightly more hopeful than she had in days. How did it go? I asked, playing my part. Better than expected. There might be an opportunity at Henderson & Associates. It's not as good as my old job, but it's something. That's great, honey. I'm proud of you for not giving up. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Thanks for being so supportive, Jack. I know this has been hard on you, too. We're a team, Liv. We'll get through this together. The lie came so easily now. But then, I'd learned from the best. We had dinner and watched a movie, playing house like nothing had changed. Olivia even initiated sex for the first time in months, probably feeling guilty about her lies or trying to maintain the illusion of normalcy. I went through the motions, but my heart wasn't in it. How could it be? Every kiss felt like betrayal, every touch like deception. This woman had planned to leave me, had laughed about my trusting nature with her lover, had lied to my face even when given the chance to come clean. She'd made her choice. Now she'd live with mine. Friday morning brought the call I'd been waiting for. Mr. Mallory, this is Patricia Hendricks at Pinnacle Tech. Could you come in this afternoon? There's been a development. Of course. What kind of development? I'd rather discuss it in person. I arrived at Pinnacle Tech at 2 p.m. to find Patricia waiting with a man in an expensive suit. Mr. Mallory, this is David Chen, our corporate attorney. We've reviewed the information you provided. Chen leaned forward. Mr. Mallory, what you've uncovered represents a serious breach of company policy and potentially criminal behavior. We're prepared to take action. What kind of action? We're filing charges against Mr. Connors for theft and fraud. We're also pursuing civil action to recover the money he spent on company credit cards for personal use. As for the severance package we gave him, we'll be demanding that back as well. I felt a surge of satisfaction. What about references? Mr. Connors will not be receiving any references from Pinnacle Tech. In fact, we'll be reporting his behavior to industry contacts to ensure he has difficulty finding similar employment. Patricia spoke up. We're also implementing new policies to prevent this kind of situation in the future. Your information has been invaluable in helping us understand the scope of the problem. I appreciate that. What about my wife? The two exchanged glances. Mrs. Mallory's termination stands, Chen said carefully. However, given the circumstances, we won't be contesting any unemployment claims she might file. It wasn't much, but it was something. More importantly, it was one more nail in Brad's coffin. That evening, I cooked Olivia's favorite dinner and opened a bottle of wine. She was in a good mood, having received a call back for a second interview. "You know what?" she said, raising her wine glass. "Maybe this is all for the best. Maybe losing that job was exactly what I needed to reassess my priorities." "Oh, how so?" "I've been thinking about us, about our marriage. I feel like we've been drifting apart lately, and I don't want that to happen. You're the most important thing in my life, Jack. I want to make sure you know that." The irony was breathtaking. Here she was talking about priorities and marriage, while her lover was about to face criminal charges for the affair they'd conducted together. "I love you too, Liv," I said, clinking my glass against hers. "More than you know." We finished dinner and went to bed early. Olivia fell asleep in my arms, probably feeling secure for the first time in weeks. She thought the worst was behind her. She was wrong. The worst was yet to come. Saturday morning, I got up early and drove to the Barrow to meet Tom. He was waiting with coffee and a newspaper. "You see this?" he asked, sliding the paper across the table. The headline read, "Local Tech Executive Charged with Corporate Fraud." The article detailed Brad's arrest, the charges against him, and Pinnacle Tech's statement about implementing new policies to prevent workplace relationships. "He was arrested yesterday evening," Tom said. "Posted bail this morning, but his lawyer says the evidence is overwhelming. He's looking at serious jail time." I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. What about Melissa? Divorce was finalized yesterday. She got the house, half his retirement, and alimony. With the criminal charges, she'll probably get more. Good for her. Tom studied my face. "You know this is going to get back to Olivia, right? She'll figure out that you know." "I'm counting on it." "What's your end game here, Jack?" I looked at my oldest friend, the man who'd helped me uncover the truth about my wife's betrayal. "My end game is justice, Tom. Olivia wanted to play games with my life, with my marriage, with my trust. She wanted to test me, manipulate me, make me look like a fool while she planned her exit strategy. And now? Now she gets to see what happens when you underestimate someone. She gets to learn that actions have consequences. She gets to discover that I'm not the trusting, gullible husband she thought I was." Tom nodded slowly. "When are you going to tell her?" I checked my watch. It was almost noon, and Olivia would be waking up soon, probably planning to spend the weekend job hunting and maintaining her facade of innocence. "Today," I said. "It's time to end this charade." I drove home, feeling calm and focused. The investigation was complete, the evidence was overwhelming, and justice was finally within reach. My wife had wanted a trust test. She was about to get the results. I found Olivia in the kitchen, still in her bathrobe, reading something on her phone. Her face was pale, her hands shaking slightly as she scrolled through what looked like a news article. "Morning, honey," I said, pouring myself coffee. "You're up late for a Saturday." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with something that might have been panic. "Jack, have you seen the news?" "What news?" "About Brad. He's been arrested." I set down my coffee mug and moved to look over her shoulder at her phone screen. The same article Tom had shown me, detailing Brad's arrest and the charges against him. "Wow," I said, injecting just the right amount of surprise into my voice. "Corporate fraud? That's serious." "This doesn't make sense," Olivia said, more to herself than to me. "Brad wouldn't. He's not that kind of person. You never really know someone, do you?" I sat down across from her, studying her face. "I mean, you worked with him every day, and apparently he was using company credit cards for personal expenses. Makes you wonder what else he was hiding." Olivia's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and whatever she saw there made her face go even paler. "I need to make some calls," she said, standing abruptly. "On Saturday? Who could be that important?" "Just work stuff, references for job applications." She hurried upstairs, and I heard the bedroom door close. A few minutes later, I could hear her voice, high and stressed, talking to someone on the phone. I gave her 15 minutes, then followed her upstairs. She was sitting on our bed, crying, her phone clutched in her hands. "Liv? What's wrong?" She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "Jack, I need to tell you something." Finally. "What is it?" "Brad. The reason he was arrested. It might be connected to me." "How could it be connected to you?" She took a shuddering breath. "The company credit card charges they're talking about. Some of them were for things we did together. Business lunches, meetings at hotels, things like that." I sat down on the bed beside her, the picture of the concerned husband. "What kind of meetings at hotels?" "Conference rooms, strategy sessions. But the way it looks—" She shook her head. "People might get the wrong idea." "What kind of wrong idea?" She looked at me, and I could see her weighing her options one more time. Tell the truth and face the consequences, or try to maintain the lie and hope for the best. Once again, she chose the lie. They might think we were having an affair. Were you? The question hung between us like a blade. This was her last chance, her final opportunity to come clean and maybe salvage something from the wreckage. "No," she whispered, "but I can see how it might look that way." And with those words, she made her final, fatal mistake. I stood up and walked to my dresser, pulling out the manila folder I'd prepared. The complete dossier of her affair, phone records, text messages, hotel receipts, photographs, everything. "You know, Liv," I said conversationally, "you're right about one thing. It does look like you were having an affair." I turned around and tossed the folder onto the bed beside her. She stared at it for a moment, not understanding. Then she opened it, and I watched the color drain from her face as she saw the first page, a photograph of her and Brad kissing in the coffee shop downtown. "Jack," she started, but I held up my hand. Just don't. She flipped through the pages, seeing months of her deception laid out in black and white. The phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts, the hotel receipts, the photographs of intimate moments she thought no one had seen. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "Does it matter? The question is, what are we going to do about it?" She looked up at me, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Jack, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you've been lying to me for months? Can you explain why you proposed that ridiculous trust test when you were already cheating on me? Can you explain why, even when I gave you multiple chances to tell me the truth, you kept lying to my face? It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." The calm I'd maintained for weeks finally cracked, and all the anger I'd been holding back came pouring out. "You've been having an affair with your ex-boyfriend for months. You've been planning to leave me. You've been laughing about how gullible and trusting I am while you destroyed our marriage." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "Jack, please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you love him? That you can't live a lie anymore? That you're going to leave me for him?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to one of the text messages, because that's all right here in your own words. I read her text message back to her. "I can't live a lie anymore. Jack doesn't deserve this, but I can't help how I feel about you." She started crying harder, but I wasn't done. "You want to know the really pathetic part, Liv? If you had just been honest with me, if you had just told me you weren't happy and wanted a divorce, I would have been hurt, but I would have respected you for it. We could have ended this with dignity. Jack, but instead, you chose to lie. You chose to cheat. You chose to manipulate me with that trust test bullshit while you were planning your exit strategy. You chose to make me look like a fool." I walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase, tossing it onto the bed beside the folder. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your things and you're going to leave. Today." This is my house too. Not anymore. I pulled out another set of papers. The divorce filing. I'm divorcing you, Liv. Adultery, irreconcilable differences, the whole 9 yards. And thanks to all this evidence, you're not getting a dime. She stared at the papers, her face crumpling. Jack, please, we can work this out. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I still love you. No, you don't. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. If you loved me, you would have told me the truth when I asked. If you loved me, you wouldn't have tried to gaslight me with that trust test. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Call Brad, maybe he can help you out. Oh wait, he's probably going to jail. And even if he wasn't, his divorce was finalized yesterday. Melissa took him for everything he had. The look of shock on her face was almost comical. His divorce? You didn't know? Melissa's been planning it for weeks. She knew about the affair, Liv. She knew everything. While you two were playing house and planning your future together, she was systematically destroying his life. That's impossible. Brad would have told me. Would he? Because according to the phone records, he stopped taking your calls 3 days ago. Looks like he cut and ran when things got complicated. I watched as the full scope of her situation hit her. No job, no husband, no lover, no money, no future. Everything she'd planned, everything she'd worked for, gone. This is all your fault, she said suddenly, her sadness turning to anger. You drove me to this. You with your boring job and your boring life and your complete lack of ambition. I needed more than you could give me. There it is, I said quietly. The real Olivia. Not the victim, not the remorseful wife, but the selfish, entitled woman who thinks the world owes her something. I deserve better than this life. Maybe you do. But you don't deserve me. You never did. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to find some angle, some way to manipulate the situation back in her favor. But there wasn't one. I'd thought of everything. Fine, she said finally. Fine. You want me gone? I'll go. But don't think this is over. I'll fight the divorce. I'll take you for everything you have. With what lawyer? You don't have a job, remember? And good luck finding one who'll take your case on contingency when the evidence of your adultery is this overwhelming. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. She was finally beginning to understand just how thoroughly I'd outmaneuvered her. You bastard, she whispered. I'm the bastard? I'm not the one who cheated. I'm not the one who lied for months. I'm not the one who tried to manipulate their spouse with psychological games. I moved closer, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper. You wanted to test my trust, Olivia. Congratulations. You failed. She packed in silence, throwing clothes and personal items into the suitcase with shaking hands. I stood in the doorway and watched, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. When she was finished, she turned to face me one last time. I really did love you once, she said. I know. That's what makes this so much worse. She walked past me toward the stairs, dragging her suitcase behind her. At the top of the stairs, she turned back. What if I had told you the truth? When you asked me directly, what if I had been honest? I considered the question seriously. Then maybe we could have ended this with some dignity. Maybe we could have remained friends. Maybe I could have forgiven you eventually. And now? Now you're dead to me. She flinched as if I'd hit her, then turned and walked down the stairs. I heard the front door open and close, heard her car start and drive away. I stood in our bedroom, my bedroom now, surrounded by the wreckage of 8 years of marriage. The manila folder was still on the bed, evidence of her betrayal scattered across the comforter we'd picked out together. My phone rang. It was Tom. How did it go? He asked. It's done. She's gone. How do you feel? I considered the question. How did I feel? Not happy, exactly. Not sad either. Just empty. Like a weight I'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted. Free, I said finally. I feel free. What now? Now I start over. Clean slate, fresh beginning, all that. And Olivia? I looked out the bedroom window and saw our neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, peeking through her curtains. By tomorrow, the whole neighborhood would know that Olivia had moved out. By next week, they'd know why. Olivia made her choices, I said. Now she gets to live with the consequences. I hung up and walked downstairs to the kitchen, where this whole thing had started just 2 weeks ago. The kitchen where my wife had proposed her trust test, thinking she was so clever, so manipulative, so much smarter than her boring, trusting husband. I poured myself a beer and sat at the table thinking about the future. I was 38 years old, financially secure, and finally free of a woman who had been planning to destroy my life. It wasn't the ending I would have chosen, but it was the ending Olivia had earned. She'd wanted to test my trust. She'd wanted to see if I was evolved enough, secure enough, modern enough to handle her games. Well, she'd gotten her answer. I was evolved enough to outmaneuver her at every turn. I was secure enough to plan her downfall while she thought she was manipulating me. I was modern enough to gather evidence, build alliances, and execute a strategy that left her with nothing. The trust test was over, and I had won.